Hello, folks. Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for another direct-to-YouTube special. This one featured by Gary F., who donated to see an 8 Thought-Knot Seer deck in action. So the idea here, let's get comfy. There we go. The idea here is that Elite Spellbinder and Thought-Knot Seer have similar functionality in that they allow you to rip something from your opponent's hand. The goal of this deck is to disrupt and beat down. And you'll notice that this deck is not built like a traditional Stompy deck. You will not see Chalice of the Void in main deck here. This theory comes from Maxtortion, who said, yeah, Chalice is kind of at its worst right now. It's not particularly a strong card. And Maxtortion shipped an original version of this list, which Gary then edited, which I then edited, and we ended up here. So rather than play Chalice, which isn't particularly great right now, we're going to try to play Thorn of Amethyst. And with Thorn and Thalia and Trinisphere and some other disruptive elements like Archon, Thought-Knot Seer, and Elite Spellbinder, the goal is to kind of make this opening, really put our opponent off balance, and then close the game quickly. The list Gary submitted had just a few cards different from this in the main deck. I didn't change the main deck too much. They had one Reality Smasher in the main deck and one Thalia Heretic Cathar, which I replaced with 2 Luminarch Aspirants. Luminarch Aspirant doesn't have synergy with Eldrazi Displacer, which is a major portion of this deck. But I was worried that we were sitting too heavy on endgame and not good enough on early game. When Maxtortion built their version of this deck, they said, yeah, I don't have enough turn 1 plays. And so we're adding Thorn of Amethyst as a play off of Ancient Tomb, and then Luminarch Aspirant as another 2-mana play off either Chrome Mox or Lotus Petal. And hopefully that bridges things a little bit. I don't exactly think that we need the finishing power of Luminarch Aspirant, but a lot of the other 2-drops that I would play here are awkward because of the Cavern of Souls. So Leonin Arbiter, for example, is a 2-drop that would be reasonable, but that's not a human. And then otherwise, we would get into things like maybe Ethersworn Canonist or Spirit of the Labyrinth. Ethersworn Canonist is on tribe, Spirit of the Labyrinth is off tribe. And I think I have to start looking at cutting the caverns if I don't play a human. And I don't love Ethersworn Canonist because we're looking to sort of change the cost of spells, and so Ethersworn Canonist isn't actually going to be doing much if our opponent can't cast more than 1 spell anyway. We have just a couple of Skyclave Apparitions, not because the card's not good, the card is amazing, but because in this Ancient Tomb Eldrazi Temple mana base, it's not necessarily going to be consistent. And it's also a core spirit, and as far as the sideboard goes, I made some changes to what they had submitted. Gary originally submitted surgical extractions in this deck list, but then I started looking at like Thorn and Trinisphere and Thalia and went, you know, I think this is actually a fairy deck. The other thing I did was I cut 2 Containment Priests that they had in the sideboard for 2 Reality Smashers. It might seem kind of weird to play that as a sideboard card, but we're going to have a good number of cards that might be dead in any given matchup. The Thorns and Trinispheres will be bad sometimes, the Swords of Plowshares will be bad sometime, and I wanted to make sure that I had just a few generic cards that I could board in no matter what the matchup looked like. And you're never really sad to just have like the 5/5 Hasty Ball Lightning effect. Like that can fill slots in literally any matchup, and totally fine. Overall, I'm excited to try out this deck list. I think it's neat that we're not playing Chalice. There's a lot, and I mean a lot, of Blue-Red Delver floating around right now. And being able to be this heavily disruptive deck that also can play 6 1-drop removal spells might be an okay place to be. Alright, if you're new here, please consider giving me a subscription before we get things fired up here. Regularly playing Legacy content, usually 5 days a week, although there was some Modern this week, and I think there will be some Vintage either this week or next week as well. And consider throwing me a like on this video to support my content. Alright, let's battle. Okay, at a glance, this hand might look fine because you have a good balance of lands and spells, but if you cast a Thorn of Amethyst, you can't actually cast a second Thorn of Amethyst. I think I'm going to pitch this one. Alright, on 5, I think I have to keep this. The Trinisphere probably goes back. I cast Thalia, and then I can't cast Trinisphere. And the second card here is much harder. I'm going to put back the Skyclave because it requires white, and none of the other cards do. I expect to lose this game, though, with how this hand looks right now. Oh, but if we're just playing against a combo deck, you might be okay. What a fucking draw. Like, literal best draw in my deck right there. Alright, cool. So now I get to Archon. And if this is Storm, Archon plus Thalia should just win game 1. This is Doomsday, we're not done yet. It being Doomsday is a reason to keep Elite Spellbinder over Thalia. But Elite Spellbinder is just a less powerful card in general. Okay, yeah. So, oh, that's actually super convenient here. So this gives my opponent a life this turn, but we immediately recoup that back with the damage from Archon. Now my opponent is officially in territory where they can cast a Doomsday. Alright, my opponent resolves their pile. I have them dead in 2 hits, and I have an Elite Spellbinder, which maybe can disrupt them. The biggest issue here is that they can just cycle a whole bunch of times, and I'll die. Alright, I don't think any of these cards matter. I'm going to take the Ponder on the off chance that their pile is built around using Ponder. Doomsday at least partially dodges a lot of hate. Yep. There's not much that can be done there. Alright. Skyclave is not particularly great here, neither is Swords to Plowshares. I know we hit a Baleful Strix there, and I know that in that specific game, if we had another Swords to Plowshares, we could have plowed the Oracle and won there. But I don't know that those are the sorts of things I super care about. Like I can wait or trade a body away if I have to get a Baleful Strix off the table. I will play Deafening Silence and Chalice. I think both are kind of medium cards. Eldrazi Displacer isn't particularly great, so going to be in the pile of cards that I consider cutting. Smasher is okay, just as something to help slam the door shut. I might board that in as well. So I have 6 cards that I can be considering here. I'm not sure on Swords of Plowshares versus Skyclave. I think I'm going to be playing a lot of like Thalia Thorn Trinisphere things if I have my way. I'm not sure that I actually want these. If I'm going to cut those, I should probably leave some number of Skyclave Apparitions just so I have answers to opponents. and I'll move placers out of the way. I mean, this is a turn 1 disruptive 3/1, and the hand does nothing. I don't think I like this. But this hand's better. I will keep this. So this is probably turn 1 Thorn, turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer. So which is worse, the Luminarch Aspirant or the second Thorn? Probably the Luminarch Aspirant. Okay. Note to self, cast the Petal prior to the Thorn. Thing matters a lot to player. It's very embarrassing when you make that mistake. Say that as someone who definitely never made that mistake before. Alright, force pitching a Baleful Strix. That's fine. Even if I get hit with a discard spell, I still have a good play next turn. With a shuffle. Okay, I think Chalice plus Thorn is better than Thought-Knot Seer. Like, we'll have any number of mana sources to draw to be able to, like, put a clock into play afterward. Basic Forest, huh? Now done 6 to myself. This can go ahead and go on Eldrazi here. We're close enough to just slamming the door on this game that I can just try to finish it. I just take the decay. I think I can leave the Doomsday since this is not mana that easily casts Doomsday. Especially now. It's also not mana that easily escapes Uro. Alright, cool. We got the one on the play. That's not surprising. The one was way harder. So now I know about Uro. And I need to respect that card. How do I respect it? Is it just with boarding the Eldrazi Displacers back in? Blinking it is awkward. Awkward, but probably an okay adjustment. Do I want a couple of swords? Really awkward with the pile of cards that I'm playing to hate on the one drops, but Uro's kind of a dick. Sort this by mana value. Treating that as a 2-drop. Looks okay. A little heavy on the curve for this game, but that's what all the mana acceleration is for. It also could be that I could just completely ignore the Uro and try to kill my opponent before it comes down. Is this hand good enough? It has a turn 1 hate card of medium minus quality, followed by a lot of hate if I draw mana sources. And it becomes very awkward if I get duressed, though. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to do this, and I lean towards no. This hand's fine. Not necessarily the best hand. It's fine. Hoping I don't get discarded here because my Chrome Mox is really important. Yeah, cool. I have Chrome Mox, Skyclave, turn 1 Thalia. Hopefully draw any, I guess, non-artifact mana source. I have turn 2 Thought-Knot, yeah. Need to play this land turn for fringe reasons. This Chrome Mox were to get forced, for example, I would want to be able to spike another soul land and play Thought-Knots here on the next turn. My Trinisphere does cost 4 mana, which isn't the best, but it's what I've got to work with currently. That's a shuffle. Don't hate that. I think Thought-Knots here is more important this turn. I just need to take a Doomsday if my opponent has one. Speaking of, my opponent's 2 Brainstorms are very weak now. Well, I mean, like, it's still a Brainstorm, and it's going to fix their hand. But what I mean by that is, like, this is a time walk for me. So they probably Brainstorm. I'm going to assume that they probably put back this Underground Sea. And then they get some stuff. But they probably don't get a lot out of this turn cycle in the grand scheme of things. Again, I can't pay a tax on a Trinisphere. So I will just Skyclave away this Lotus Petal and call that a turn. In a Fatal Push. Oh, we're getting the other Brainstorm now. So that potentially just Brainstorm locks them and kills them. I don't even know if they can cast a Doomsday and reasonably stay alive. Yeah, I get a Chalice on 1 this turn. I'm fine with trading Skyclave for Strix and just attacking for 4, I believe. I don't really want them to draw a card off of Thought-Knots here. Yep. Alright, Chalice, do your thing. Is currently 1. Done. So Doomsday has to kill me in the same turn now? Yeah, okay. Alright, good stuff. Doomsday can be a little tricky. Alright, I'll be keeping this opening hand and play a turn 1 Thalia if I feel like that's a good thing to do. Otherwise I can have a turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer. It'll kind of depend on what my opponent does with their opener, what I want to do. I'm guessing I'll just Thalia blind. But I've been wrong before. Yeah, against Island Pass, I will just Thalia turn 1. I don't have enough information to know whether or not Thalia turn 1 thing that I want to be doing, but Ponder can be indicative of various combo decks and various control decks and various, basically all the decks that I don't play. And Thalia is good, or at least fine, against most of them. Especially now that I have 2 soul lands. I, in fact, might want to take 2 damage here in order to guarantee Thought-Knot Seer next turn. It'll be real shitty if I'm playing against Blue-Red Delver, but if I'm playing against a combo deck or a control deck, it's a great line. To go ahead and take that. It's aggressive, but I think we're playing the aggressive deck, so go low. This also allows me to play a Thalia around days, which is not irrelevant. Alright. Pitching a Force of Negation there. So still a pretty ambiguous opener, but less likely to be a combo deck now. Mana base is starting to look like a blue-white control deck, but again, still early to tell, and blue fetch lands are a little ambiguous. You have a Jace on top. Otherwise, this hits like a truck and probably takes whatever one piece of relevant stuff you have. Yeah, I will take that to Fairy. Force of Negation has no power here. Not that one. Yeah, I'll play the Aspirant pre-combat. Ow. Now, unfortunately, this does set up to make their predict better. Alright. We're looking to dodge something like a Terminus. Talking about fringe lines that could happen, there's an argument that I don't put the counter on Thought-Knot Seer last turn, so that Luminarch Aspirant can attack in and not be jump blocked successfully by a Snapcaster Mage in this turn cycle. But since I have the Swords to Plowshares, I don't know that actually makes it. I don't know that there's much that I can actually do if my opponent ponders and finds a Terminus. I don't think this is a Terminus because of how slowly my opponent is taking actions here. It's a Terminus. Terminus is half the second card down, and my opponent gets to stabilize significantly. I am unsure about what exactly they're thinking about if this is this difficult. It may be like 1 good card, 2 dead cards, and there's no way to shuffle. Alright. Now we start diversifying here. Oh, and by the way, my opponent did ultimately shuffle off of that Ponder. So if we get savaged by Terminus, it was blind. Huh? So they can Thought Knotseer bounce, and I can kill Jace. I think that the cards I have are too good to play around Terminus. Yeah, Scalding Tarn is on top. All right, cool. All right, yeah, my opponent just there. So I attack, kill. Well, I'm gonna play Archon pre-combat, and like life is just. All right, playing against Miracles. Yeah, 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 yeah. And then I have to cut one other card. Could be a piece of mana. I could play Disenchant for counterbalance, but I'm not sure how much I actually care about counterbalance. Like, counterbalance was in play for basically the whole game and didn't counter a single one of my spells. I don't know that my mana is good enough to cut any of these sources. We're at 25 mana sources, which is like Red Prison levels of mana, and given how many 3-drops we have, I think it's really important that I have these. I'm just gonna like go down one here or one Eldrazi Displacer. I still have a couple of Skyclave Apparitions as answers to like a counterbalance or something that sneaks in play. This is 3 mana on turn 1. That's not a turn 1 Karn. I also, even if one of these was another, say, Lotus Petal, I don't know that I'd keep this hand anyway. Yep, this hand is fine. I'm going to toss back either an Elite Spellbinder or an Archon. I have to think about it for a second. I think Elite Spellbinder. Close. As a general rule of thumb, disrupt first, finish second. So the reason not to play something like this early is because of Force of Negation specifically. But if I just play out Luminarch Aspirant here, Swords to Plowshares gets a lot of value. Whereas if I do this, my opponent's like Force of Wills, Force of Negation, Swords to Plowshares, all their cantrips, basically all of their cards just get worse. The dead card. And next turn, I get to start playing the aggressive finisher game because I'll have 2 pieces of disruption in play, assuming this resolves. And if I don't, I just play this. Start trying to beat down. Here, the Brainstorm in response here can't successfully find a Force of Will to counter this because of the Thorn of Amethyst. Now, something to keep in mind here is that my opponent could have put a Brainstorm cards down. So there's a world where I don't actually Aspirant here. I don't think I'm going to play around that world. My pressure's not really great currently, and I think I need this damage boost. Sure. Alright, so now I have weak disruption in play and a growing threat. I would say my opponent is currently favored. Yep, I would say that's accurate. I should have attacked there. I had Thorn in play, so a free spell would have punished me, and they don't play free spells of that nature. My opponent's going to get slowed down. I'm in bad-ish shape. I also don't know if I'm supposed to board Swords to Plowshares back in. As weird as that sounds. Because on the play, I just want to like be proactive and try to kill my opponent. Yeah, I am donezo. Really? Over Swords? I don't know what the rest of their hand looks like. It may be contextually correct. They also may feel that just like monks invalidate Monastery Mentor enough. Or sorry, monks invalidate this thing attacking enough. You need to fetch. Yep, so my opponent doesn't have a lot of gas, but I don't have that many top decks that are just absolute A+ amazing quality here. We're good. I'm not really a comeback from behind deck, especially from that position. I think I'm just going to hit submit and not board in extra paths and swords. I really want to proactively end the game as quickly as possible, and Swords of Plowshares doesn't do that. If I had a game on the draw here, I would play Swords. I don't think this hand is fast enough. I'm going to throw back either a Churnosphere or a Plains, and I don't know which one. Both are not great. The Churnosphere will just be impossible to cast if either one of my spells sticks. Thorn first versus Thalia first is going to be weird, because there's like Source of Plowshares versus Force of Negation to think about. I think I want Thorn first, though. Thorn does not get removed by Swords to Plowshares, and makes the future Swords to Plowshares that would remove Thalia harder to cast. So I think I'm going to open myself up to Force of Negation in order to play around Swords to Plowshares better. Well, I guess I play out this Lotus Petal now. Otherwise, it becomes very uncastable. I am really going to need a finisher to follow this up. Like, if I could choose a Reality Smasher or Thought-Knot Seer off the top, would be grand. Alright, my opponent can play 1-drops again. Thank you, Plains. Very cool. I would say I'm now heavily unfavored to win this game. I've just drawn one threat in the first X number of cards of my library. Yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana sources to 2 spells. Not a great ratio. Yeah, now my opponent isn't disrupted anymore. I have lost this one. It'll take a couple of turns. But I do not expect under any circumstances to win this game. Anything like a Jace or a Teferi or Mentor, or even like Angel, often treat the Angels, probably will beat me here. I lack the filtering that my opponent has to really... Yep. And I think good on my opponent for capitalizing on, like, what is very obviously a weak position from me. If I draw dead this turn, I'm just going to concede. I'm not going to beat that power. The issue is that like most of my best top decks aren't going to beat 2 Angels here. Like a Reality Smasher doesn't attack through that. Arn gets killed immediately. And a day it is. That's okay. So this hand's awkward. Turn 2 Archon, turn 3 Archon, into turn 4 Archon. Keep? It's like not bad against Wasteland. If I get Wastelanded off Ancient Tomb, that's okay. This hand's not great, but I think it's good enough. Yeah. I believe I do Ancient Tomb again. I wanted my Archons to be uncounterable, thank you. I guess we're playing this one the slow way. Oh, my opponent's hand is now very good against my hand. I have the Hatebear side of the deck against a deck that is full of other Hatebears and like can largely ignore the stuff that I'm doing. I think hedging against Karakas, I'm supposed to do this. And I think I'm supposed to play my cards with evasion first. The board will likely get clunked up in the not too distant future. Opponent started to pay a cost, so I think they have a Swords to Plowshares. Oh, that's good. It with Eldrazi Displacer in particular is super cute. Oh, do not have Swords to Plowshares. Cool. Basic Plains doesn't do anything for me, personally. I respect it. Batterskull's fair. Not good against Eldrazi Displacer, though, luckily for me. My opponent has paused a couple of times like they're going to have a Swords to Plowshares. Okay, that's very good. That stops Eldrazi Displacer from, like, A, invalidating the Batterskull Germ, and B, Skyclave Apparitioning every turn and wrecking everything. I'm going to hit Revoker with that. I'm thinking about whether or not I want to floop a Thorn of Amethyst into play. I believe the answer is no. Like, at the end of the day, my opponent still has a Rishadan port, and I need to respect that. me taking that hit. Unfortunately, this gives my opponent a pretty good buffer in terms of life total. But that's fine. Fine, I can still cast my Swords to Plowshares. Some awkward things can happen in terms of timing of spells. So for example, if I blink the Germ now, my opponent can just main phase equip Batterskull, so I think I need to pass with all my mana open. A little unfortunate because I would like to continue to deploy cards, but I just don't think that's correct currently. Alright, no immediate piece of second equipment off Stoneforge. That's good for me. Okay, sideboard options here. I'm gonna have a lot of cards I want to board out. I'm not really great at permanently answering this Batterskull, unfortunately. It's also going to be a weird sub game of, does my opponent want to Schadenport me? Do they just want to bounce and redeploy via Stoneforge? I need mana. Yeah, that doesn't really do anything. I would be good with you boarding me. Oh, Skyclave caps out at 4, so we can't take the Batterskull here. But I can take the Stoneforge. Unfortunately, my opponent can go Batterskull equip. And then a weird subgame of with Eldrazi Displacer begins. I just need to work towards 6 mana. I think if I get to 6 mana and I can double activate Eldrazi Displacer, I have no worries. It's when like I can only single activate while deploying no other spells that things are problematic. Don't know if that's the creature you're supposed to equip it to, because it's pretty likely that my deck contains Karakas. But I get it. Oh, Lally attacks. Yeah, I'm just not making any headway here. I'm not losing out that badly, but I'm not doing the things that I want to be doing. This one's gonna go slowly. So do you have the 5th land or another land here to just re-equip this and bash in? You do. But it enters tapped. This was perhaps not the best line. Doesn't matter, I had Flicker Wisp. Yeah, if I don't draw more lands, I'm just going to get outvalued here at the Flicker Wisp. Is not the sort of thing that you want to be blinking. That's fine, that's a start, but 4 isn't any different than 3. I think I need to hold back everyone. This is probably now the sort of situation where if my opponent doesn't make mistakes, it's very difficult for me to win. So, like, I can kill this germ here, and then my opponent equips to the Flicker Wisp, and I take 8. Best for me. But it's probably my line, because Flicker Wisp here is just not... This situation is just gross. My opponent has mana, I don't. I think I need, like, an Eldrazi Temple as the top card of my library to have a chance here. I also might consider just chump blocking here. The Alpha Strikes become less scary. I think I'm just going to eat this one, though. Yeah, my Kingdom for more mana. Alright, so I can take out this Flicker Wisp and force a re-equip and chump block with Archon of Emeria. Continue to try to eat my opponent's permanents. But again, I just need more mana, especially more colorless mana. Different planes than before. Archon goes in front of the bus here. Prelate takes this out. Or vice versa. I take out Sanctum Prelate with this. Ali attacks, yo. It's a thing. Yep, I just need more mana. Can't double spell here. And I can't spell plus hold up Eldrazi Displacer. It's kind of frustrating. I am making headway, for what it's worth. I blink with Skyclave, I remove the Thalia. Alright, well. I think my opponent played turn kind of poorly. I don't think it matters. But I don't think you need to pull the trigger that early. Actually, this enters tapped, so that kills me. It was fine. Let's see, so if I blink Thalia there, they re-equip, they have 2 lethal. Yeah, I'm not there anyway. Alright, so basically, as a starting point, I have 4 Thorn of Amethyst and 3 Trinispheres that need to come out. That gives me 2 Disenchants, 2 Paths, 2 Reality Smasher, and Karn. And I don't want any of the other of the stuff, and none of those cards are worse than cards that I took out. But I just did not get to really play Magic that game because I was so tight on mana. Yep, this is disastrous. Just lose to a Phyrexian Revoker. And is not good in the matchup. I probably have to keep it. I think this goes back. Like, it could be a turn 1 play, but I'd really rather play a flyer on turn 2. I'm gonna try to stop a piece of equipment here. Somewhat interesting that opponent still has Thalia. That would have been first cards that I boarded out, like Thalia, Sanctum Prelate. I think I let that Thalia poke me for 2. Well, it's not exactly going to poke me for 2 in all likelihood. I think it's more important for me to get flyers in play. I just want to clock my opponent here. I can bounce Thalia later. Uh, Super punished for not bouncing Thalia and holding up Swords to Plowshares. I don't regret it, but it's punishing. Like, my opponent had exactly 1 unknown card, you know, the card from their draw step, then it was Mom. Sailovy. Opponent played Snow-Covered Plains rather than Plains. Cool things. My opponent's pretty favored. And sure, I will take my free value. Slightly awkward here. By the fact that I can, you know, get in under the Thalia attacks, so to speak. Womp womp. Flicker Wisp coming in off the pile is going to put an abrupt halt to everything cool that I have going on. Displacer is great. Turn's a little weird. I can either Displacer or Swords to Plowshares. I think I'm going to Displacer. And not attack. This Elite Spellbinder took that Stoneforge earlier, and now we're reaching the point of the game where my opponent might like A2 and cast it, which is why I don't particularly love Elite Spellbinder. Sure. I'll see how my opponent plays. They're either one of these creatures that I particularly want to keep. Really. And block with both and kill one of these and Mother of Runes. Or we could just straight trade. Sure, it's obvious, but my opponent is favored here. I don't know that playing Stoneforge is better than just porting me. Alright. A good last card from my opponent. Alright. I can Skyclave their Skyclave and get a bunch of power in play. I can Skyclave their Flicker Wisp and stop the aerial assault, or I can Skyclave the Stoneforge, hope they don't rip a land, and try to keep the Batterskull out of play that way. I think if this Batterskull gets into play, I can't win. It's just like last game where like I just don't have good answers to it. Like I have 2 disenchants and playing Revokers, right? Yeah. So unless I snipe it while it's in hand via something like an Elite Spellbinder, it's problematic. And even if my opponent doesn't play the Batterskull, if they just port me down, like my life is terrible anyway. Did you forget your Thalia attacks again? Yes. Alright, I played towards a line that did not pay out here. I think I feel comfortable conceding this one. This doesn't have mana. This has mana. I'm gonna keep this chunk of plains. Turn 1 Thorn into turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer. Spend Riftbolt. Alright. I'm not sure how this is going to go. This matchup can be, like, highly variable. I have things that can completely stop them from casting spells and decent-sized threats, but I also have, like, Ancient Tombs that can hurt me. I think I want my threat in play as quickly as possible, despite the fact that Trinisphere is a banger. Do I take the Exquisite Firecraft that can kill a Thought-Knot Seer? What costs 4 mana? Probably not. Gonna take the Eidolon here. I think that's worth the most on this board. Close between Exquisite Firecraft, but do you want to offer Chain Lightning and Monastery Swiftspear for Thought-Knot Seer? I don't think so. Take one. Nice. I think I will just go ahead and cast this. Now I can make that Exquisite Firecraft even more expensive. Crash in for 4. I know about a Chain Lightning, but my opponent's going to kill my Elite Spellbinder with that this turn. Ooh. Yeah, I like it. Not quite to double spell territory currently. Okay. Are we still racing? Or are you holding back now? We are still racing. That's fine. I think I take this hit. Because I have Eldrazi Displacer plus Blink shenanigans available for the next turn cycle. Yep. So I can block this, blink that, and then there's no card that can deal 8 damage to me on this board. They can get 4s, but nothing more than that. You recognize that. Alright. I have cards that are okay. Trinisphere is a lot less attractive on the draw. I still probably play it because I can turn one at a good portion of the time. Paths are okay. I have a lot of creatures that can just jump in the way and trade with stuff, though. I don't know that I'm supposed to path. I think I want Chalices, and I think I want Reality Smashers just as something that clocks really hard. I don't know that I actually want any of, like, these cards. I don't think this matchup has enough time for Aspirant. I think Aspirant gets subbed out for Chalice. And then I'm just going to play these as something that clocks hard over maybe Elite Spellbinder. Like, Elite Spellbinder is cool when it takes a big expensive card, but when it just takes something that costs one in the first place, that's not really where you want to be. I think that's an okay substitution. The Ancient Tomb hand. I don't think this is a good Ancient Tomb hand. I think I just, like, die to my own mana base. I can't cast his swords. I take damage off of this every turn. Turn one, Thought-Knot Seer. I mean, that's not bad. It's a plan. Oh, turn one Thought-Knot Seer into turn two Thought-Knot Seer confirmed. Gotta go fast. Do I care about the smash on my white source? I probably care about the smash on my white source. Like, it doesn't matter for my next turn cycle, but I would like to cast these white cards at some point. Opponent's playing different mountain arts. Should have not crossed out that mountain before confirming, like, what they were doing. I'm gonna take the 1 damage and not risk it. I'm just gonna clock them back real hard. Yeah, lesson for the kiddos at home. Don't mismatch your art. Hey, if you have, like, different card names, like, for some tactical advantage, like playing around Predict, but this sort of thing is not great. Why are we lightning bolting on my turn and missing out on prowess damage? I'm going to 100% take Exquisite Firecraft here. Because it kills Thought-Knot Seer. Did you just 3 damage a Thought-Knot Seer? They just 3 damage the Thought-Knot Seer and had it do. Well, I guess it gains a little bit of damage, but I don't think it was correct to make that very tactically risky decision. Like, that saved me 3 life. Actually, probably Thalia here. less mana efficient, but it stops my opponent from casting some of their spells. Crashing with both there. Very good for me. My opponent double blocks. Yep. Yeah. So I go to first strike damage. And I'll remove the second one. I have 6 power on board. My opponent has some card in hand that's not castable. I'll hit them for 6 and then hit them for 8. Expect this one is over. And is really awkward. It's like so close to being really good. This is a 6-card hand that doesn't have this Chrome Mox, and I think as a 6-card hand, this is just kind of slow. I'm going to go ahead and mulligan this. Like, otherwise I'm putting an Elite Spellbinder on this to play out turn 1 Eldrazi Displacer. That doesn't win games. This hand could win games. I will be keeping this. It does not have white mana, though. But, like, Thorn into Thorn is pretty sick. You? I think I have enough redundancy already in these Thorn effects. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe just like dogpiling it on is how I win with the hand that looks like this. Oh, please just don't play an elf. Fuck. Yep. Alright. We've kept the wrong sort of hand. I'm still going to play this out because it can mess with glimpse things, but we're not winning this game. Like, my mulligan was good against combo decks, okay against blue decks generically, very bad versus creature-based decks. We don't also improve after sideboarding either. I think I'm just going to concede now. Well, I guess I can show this thought nuts here. That just like solidifies the fact that I look like I'm on the weird colorless Eldrazi build. Alright, so my opponent plays Heritage Druid, and then they have 5 mana off this. They have yeah, I get hit for a shit ton this turn. I'm comfortable conceding here. I'm not gonna win from this position. Also, our Shepherd is too strong without any removal. Alright. Path's okay. Chalice used to be good against elves and is now not really great. I 100% need to take these thorns out of the deck. That would get these in. Do I play the Chalice? I'm looking to just keep aggro hands and kill my opponent. Chalice and Trinisphere don't play into aggro, but I think this creature is too small to really matter. Trinisphere versus Chalice. Alice shuts off my own path to exiles and they can play around it. I'm gonna submit with this. But I am not prepared for this matchup in the slightest. This hand does not goldfish quickly. Like, I can path, but that mana ramps my opponent. I'm going to try to kill my opponent. This hand is also not good. And turn to Elite Spellbinder. I can't cast this Thought-Knots here. I don't think this hand is good enough. Your deck. Don't ask for a lot. However, a land being on top of my library would be fucking grand here. Alright. Opponent can get a Dryad Arbor here and start beating me. I do think this hand was the best of all the hands that I looked at. I don't regret mulliganing to this even if it doesn't work out. Second Dryad Arbor? Well, fuck me. My opponent has cards, is it even correct? To cast them versus just swinging in. Guy's Cradle changes that equation. I'm fucked. I think I am officially at the point where even if I top deck lands, I'm not getting out of this. Yep. I could just get natural ordered right now. Body's ready. End the league. Kill me. Kill me. I want to die. For sure. I'll concede if I miss another land drop. Yeah, that's fine. All right. Overall thoughts on the deck. Not great, not horrible. Didn't feel embarrassed to play it, but I didn't feel like I was very consistent. Even after I added in a couple of extra 2-drops in Luminarch Aspirant, I still feel like this deck doesn't have enough early plays. Like, this deck's very powerful if your hand looks okay, and you have like a good balance of like lands and spells, but the hands that are bad are really bad. Like, it's just, you'd end up with like too much stuff that's up here and not the ability to cast them, and you end up with some clunkers. So how do I describe this? This is a deck where its best hands are absolutely batshit insane, and they'll steamroll so many different sorts of decks, and its worst hands just fall over and die to itself pretty easily. I very rarely really got to have Eldrazi Displacer do its thing. Like, it's a cool card. It can do a lot, but I so frequently had things that I wanted to be casting, and so having Eldrazi Displacer as a mana sink wasn't actually all that great, despite the theoretical ability to be blanking my Thought-Knots here as Spellbinders, Skyclaves. I don't think this deck idea is quite there. Even in like trying to tune it and make it better, I don't think this one is quite there, where it's just better than established versions of White Eldrazi. If you want to try this again, I would be looking at cutting some number of 3-drops for more 2-drops, whether that's something like a Leonin Arbiter or some other hate bear. But once you do that, like I kind of said in the intro, you might have to remove Cavernous Souls from the equation. As far as the sideboard goes, I felt like my sideboard was fine, but not overly impressive. Um, yep, I mean, we just kind of end up lukewarm for the league, and that's okay. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please click the like button. It helps me out a lot. I'm going to be looking to record a lot of content over the summer, so if you have something you want to see on stream, or rather on YouTube, this is a great time to donate and make that happen. The deck list, as well as the donation information, is always in the video description. All right, have a great rest of the day. See ya!